Like to be here in the room with all of you and welcome you. We're obviously gathered here at a time of great urgency, but also great opportunity. Reality is, in the last several quarters, we seem to be falling further and further behind the commitments that were made, whether at the country level or the company level. And just the other day, I was reading that a forecast that says that we're likely to reach 2 degrees Celsius within 5 years, so by 2030. So the old 1.5 target is all but buried and forgotten, although people are reluctant to admit that. And despite that, we know that climate tech funding has actually decreased last year. And at a moment when we need to be sprinting, we're actually falling behind, retreating. And this is not just policy failure, it's not just market failure, it's leadership failure. And I think we're gathering here with that backdrop and trying to see how we can be part of the solution. And obviously, we have a voracious appetite for energy that is only going to increase over time, not stabilize over time, as we get more and more cooling loads, more and more pervasive use of AI, and of course more electrification as a percentage of the total energy mix and so forth. The good news is we added 30 gigawatts of renewable energy last year. The challenge is that it is flattening, and so to hit our 2030 target, we have to double the pace at which we are adding renewable energy. India's been quite clear that we're going to burn and use every energy source in pursuit of both energy security and development. But the more we can increase renewables, and that as a percentage of the mix, the better off we are. And again, I think we all know that the biggest challenge out there are the aging grids. DISCOMs are under severe strain, and the infrastructure is really brittle. I live in Koramangala, not too far from here. On average, we have 4 or 5 outages a day, which is quite shocking. And I think we're relatively well off compared to some parts of the country. And already last year, peak power shortages reached in excess of 3,000 megawatts. Now, this is not just an energy transition challenge. It's an economic challenge. It's a social challenge. And the only way we're going to be able to solve this is dramatically more innovation. And that innovation is going to need a lot more leadership, a lot more capital. Currently, we have about 3,000 clean energy startups. The sad news is, promising as many of them are, a lot of them aren't going to scale. And that's not because the entrepreneur isn't good or the idea isn't great. It's because we are starved of early stage capital. And the ecosystem in which these early stage companies are embedded is pretty rudimentary. So things like mentorship, people who are able to help them navigate both policy challenges as well as market linkages, etc. Not that many. And this is why sort of all credit is for ENTICE. You conceptualize this essentially to change this. This is not a startup challenge. This is not an innovation prize. I think to view it and frame it as an innovation prize would not be doing this a disservice. What we want to do is use really the prize to help build up the innovation ecosystem for clean energy startups. Now, ENTICE 1, the 1.0, showed what is possible. We had over 400 applications. We had 30 partners participate in it, and 4 outstanding winners in battery storage, smart metering, and regulation. I had the opportunity to spend about an hour with a really sharp serial entrepreneur, Kumar, and he's an example of the kind of entrepreneur that we need to see many more of and support many more of. And essentially, this startup is working with GEAPP's DUET program. DUET stands for Digitizing Utilities for Energy Transitions. Essentially trying to build a digital twin of a discount, so you can do a bunch of things. But the 1 hour demo blew my mind as to what is possible. And the only question for me is how many more bikes are out there, and how do we discover them, and how do we help them succeed at scale? And that's what we are trying to build with ENTICE 2.0. So this time we're launching two challenge statements. One is behind the meter analytics to optimize energy demand and predict, what's going to happen to the infrastructure and where it needs upgrades and additions. And the other one is industrial smart meter data analytics. So these challenges begin to go to the heart of the infrastructure problems. And we're backing this with some modest amount of financial capital. This year we appreciate the contribution of Spectrum Impact, who's contributing pro and equity funding. GEAPP itself is putting $500,000 in form of technical assistance. And GEAPP, by the way, GEAPP is not an organization. Of course, we're an organization, an entity, but really all of us are part of GEAPP. It's an alliance. It's all of us who come together to solve particular problems. And so our ecosystem of alliance partners already exists. We'll be working with these startups to have scalable pilots with the discounts and so forth. We've also formalized partnerships with PPIIT and the Startup India, with IEMA, with Climatex Capital, with Havana, and many others. But glad as I am that we are here together, I'm reminded of something that Einstein said, which is the problems of the world won't be solved by the same thinking that created it. Okay? So, the scale of the problem is such, and the urgency of the crisis is such, that we need to be thinking in a profoundly different way, both about the ambition we have and the way in which we go about it. We hope to shortlist 15 startups and work closely with them this time. I think the challenge here is to make a number of them meaningfully successful. In financial terms, that might mean a unicorn status, but I think we need to think meaningfully in terms of the impact they're able to create for people. And if we are able to create a few lighthouses of this sort, I think our ability to crowd in more capital, more partners, more mentors, and so on next year with ENTICE 3.0 will be appreciably better. I had the good fortune of spending about nearly a decade with Microsoft, helping build up the business in India. And the way Microsoft thought about ecosystems was just profoundly different from the way everybody else thought about it. I'm talking now about 2000 to 2010. And back then, the main challenge we had was not competition. It was actually lack of usage. There simply weren't enough people using tech or building applications domestically. Most of it was just export of services. So our number one challenge to grow the business was to grow the ecosystem of people who were both building applications and using these. So, every company I saw, every tech company, every product company, does something around the ecosystem. So they'll say, let's go to college and introduce a program, have a lab or something. Well, the scale at which we did this in Microsoft was very different. We were there in 2,500 colleges, not 25 colleges. Okay, we would certify 100,000 developers on .NET every year. Okay, we ran for 25 years a student competition called the Imagine Cup, and so on and so forth. So again, it's about scale and sustaining this year after year after year. And so again, I would say ENTICE, I think, is an interesting idea, and it's a promising beginning, but we need to work together to think about the scale at which we are operating, the scale at which we want to have impact, and the speed with which we get there. And we're not going to be able to do that if GEAPP is the sole organizing entity. I think we need many more of us to come together in a collaborative to make this happen.